Welcome back to Universe. I'm Andrew, and today I'm going to turn this into this. So I've been painting miniatures for about a year, I guess, since the Army Painters Speed Paints 1.0 came out, but I definitely still consider myself a beginner. And I've been 3D printing miniatures for about 1 month. So I thought it might be interesting to take you on a journey of a miniature from just a 3D file into a fully painted, finished, ready to play model from a very beginner standpoint. So obviously there is learning, especially with the 3D printer stuff, getting it set up and everything. So I'm not talking brand new beginner, but hopefully if it's something that you are interested in, whether you paint but don't have a 3D printer, or maybe you have a 3D printer but you don't paint, or you do neither but you're interested in one or the other, you can see just how easy or potentially hard it is to do different parts of this process. So let's get started. So first up, you'll need an STL file. I'm going to be using this Florleoth, one of these three. So this is $21 from the Dragon Keeper's Lodge. So I'm not necessarily recommending that you use this one. I actually got this for supporting their tribe. So every month, if you pay some monthly fee, you get a bunch of stuff. So I got for $18, I got these plus a bunch of others. So $18 or $21 for these three seems pretty high. But if you really want this one in particular, this would be what I'll have a link in the description. But really just pick whatever STL file you want to do. And now I've opened up Chitubox, which is the slicing software that I use. There are a bunch of other ones, or at least a few other ones, but I haven't used any of them. Still getting a hang of this one. And then if you have the STL file you need, just drag it from your Explorer, I'm on Windows, but into Chitubox, it will load up and appear. So this is a pre-supported one. If you get a Dragon Trappers Lodge files, they have pre-supported or unsupported. The supports just make sure that everything will print or be created in or properly. So you start with the empty build plate. Resin printers actually print upside down like this, and slowly they build from the top so that everything is hanging via gravity. So these supports make sure that when you get to things like these tendrils that are sticking out, that they have something to hold on to, or they're not just like floating in midair. So that's what the supports are for. They tend to come off pretty easily as long as you have good supports, which, I mean, depends on the STL file you use. If you don't have supports on the model you want to use, you can also go to this tab on Chitubox. And what I just do is, if it's a small model, I will click light. If it's a medium model or heavy model, I'll click appropriate, and it will create matching supports, and Chitubox will detect it. I click plus all, and you can go in and fine tune it, which I have done. Obviously, I don't need to add supports to an already supported file. It's also using the Z-lift height to raise the model up so that make room for some supports and stuff like that. But anyway, for this one, I'm just going to do this and put them right in the middle here. And then I'm going to click slice. I do often print multiple models on one plate at the same time. It doesn't really slow it down. The only thing that slows down the printer is how high it has to print, because it has to spend time on every little layer. So you could have infinite, or not infinite, but like your entire base level could be covered. It would take the same amount of time as a single drop. But the taller the model is, that's what makes it take longer. And now on the right, it's going to show an estimate of how long it's going to take. That'll depend on your printer. It's showing an expected cost of how much resin is being used for this model. So as you can see, this is an 80-cent model. Some resin will probably be wasted. It'll cling to the model. I have to wash it off, and it'll end up costing a little bit more. But I put in my price per bottle, and so the app can calculate that. If you don't set the price that you paid and how, then it might not have the right calculation, but hopefully that's approximately right. And then I'm just going to click save and save this sliced file onto my computer, and it's going to generate the slices. Refers to again, every layer is being printed one at a time, each tiny little layer. And so it's the file is going to tell the printer for each of those 1,000 layers or whatever where to create resin. So once that's done, you can see this is a little USB flash drive, and that's what I'm gonna have to use to put files into your 3D printer. It doesn't have storage of its own. It's just gonna read from a thumb drive. 3D printer I have comes with one. You can see mine is called the Mars 3. I've still got the original files that came on the thumb drive in that folder. And I'm just gonna save that .ctb file that just got generated, just got sliced up, and paste it into this thumb drive. It's copying over right now. And there you go. This is our file. And I will safely remove this thumb drive from my computer. Put this, well, I'll just show you. All right, so this is my printer, and here is the flash drive that I just saved the file onto. You can see some resin spillage over here. I used a UV flashlight to dry that, so that's all dried resin for anybody worried about my health and safety, because resin is not friendly to be around. It is toxic, hence this cover. It also protects the vat of resin from any ambient UV light. But now I'm going to press print, and you can see my Fluoroloth file is showing up. So we'll just tap that and press play, and immediately that plate starts to lower. You can hear the hum. Now it is lowered down into the vat. The resin is bubbling up around it, and it's going to level itself out and turn on the LED screen, and you'll be able to see the first layer getting cured. Well, not directly, but we'll be able to see where on the screen is lighting up in order to turn that liquid resin into solid. And there we go. There's the base first layer of our Fluoroloth. It's going to cure for several seconds. The base plate will raise up, let the resin flow, and then it will re-level that back down a fraction of a millimeter higher than it was before in order to then cure the next layer, and so on. All right, we're making progress here. It says there's an hour and 13 minutes left, and you can see a little bit peeking out. You can see those supports have formed. It's moving down to make a new layer. Once it makes that new layer, it'll come up just a little bit. Of course, we won't be able to see it all until it's done. And we're at 100%. I took the cover off, and here he is hanging upside down. I have a flexible magnetic build plate, so I can just pull that right off, and there's our Fluoroloth. Let's take it and clean it up. All right, so I'm in my extremely messy garage section here, but I've got some alcohol. So there's some really fancy cleaning stations you can get. I just use alcohol and Tupperware, and the flexible build plate means I can bend this to break it off. So I'm going to clean the alcohol off of that plate, or the resin off that plate. I'm going to clean this off. The alcohol here, I've actually I've cleaned it, I've filtered out some of the dried resin, left it in the sun to cure, but it's still a little bit gray. Just cleaned some off there. And you can see some of the details on him better. Put it over here, and I'll probably let that sit for a few minutes. I've been using this jar. This guy's a little big for the jar. This has just got water. Sometimes I heat up the water, but I don't know. Some people go crazy and get fancy. I feel like I've been kind of lazy, and it still have minis coming out just fine. So let's see if I can do it with one hand a little bit without breaking him, but the supports tend to just come off pretty easily. Some of the minis do have finer parts where you really want to be careful. So I'm going to go off camera and use two hands for this, but it's pretty satisfying generally to just crack these off. Ooh, look at that. Oh, actually, here we go. It's just going to come out. Hopefully I don't break anything. I can put this in my pile of supports by a window so sunlight comes in and can cure this over time during the day. My support graveyard here. Something stuck. Right, one of his vines was actually tangled in the support. It wasn't actually connected. It was just this one here was looped around a support. But yeah, now we have this mini, and he needs to be cured. I'm gonna shine it with a UV flashlight. I'm gonna put him in my little waiting area here. I was trying him with a flashlight a little bit, but otherwise I'll probably leave him for a day or two in the sun until I get around to priming it, and then we can paint him. Oh, and I've already got his base over here, so you can see he's got some slots on his feet where those will, looks like he's on high heels, and those will slot in. All right, so here's our guy the next day. Let's see if we can, there's some more fairies and other wolves for the same army in the background, but yeah, he's looking pretty good on his base. That again, I'd already printed the base separately, but I just kind of slotted him in here. And so he comes right out with these little pegs in those little holes. Again, that just depends on the model. We're gonna prime both of them, and I'm gonna stick them on with some regular blue tack or sticky tack onto this board here. And here he's wanting to fall over a little bit, but so now he's stuck on there. This is stuck on the bottom, and that's just gonna hold it in place. I can lift this up and spray paint them while they're kind of floating in the air. I can get their sides and their bottoms so that I can turn them around and get from every angle, which is why I like to use this wooden bar. And I have this that I bought at Target. I was using like a hobby spray from the Army Painter, and it was pretty good. I was noticing it was kind of rough, and also it ran out locally. I couldn't find it. So I just went to Target and brought this regular white spray paint, or this does say it's a flat white primer. It is not a gloss, so this has been pretty good for me. It's a little smooth, and it also tends to pool away from the edges. Let's just take a look. Unfortunately, I can't hold the camera, the wood piece, and the spray paint at the same time, but here I've spray primed them. You can see it pools a little bit. It still looks a little bit gray. You can see some of the plastic through it, but I haven't had any, and especially like in the crevices for some reason, it doesn't fill in those areas. But I haven't found that to be a problem. If anything, those can just be considered the shadows anyway. And ultimately, I think this is gonna be good. All right, so now it's been a day or so, and we've got him primed on my little painting table. This is just a TV tray. Some of my other figures I've been working on are in the background. You can see the paints. I'm working with speed paint from the Army Painter. They're about to release 2.0 formula, but this is all 1.0 formula. I've been perfectly happy with that. And this is going to be part of the same army, this Briarthorn, or whatever it's called, Wolfhound, Briarhound, this plant dog here, also from the same creator. And so I'm going to try to match the color scheme a bit. I might not do just pink flowers though. Let's see, he's got a big flower for a face, and then he's got some shoulder flowers and a bunch of smaller flowers. So I was thinking for the flowers, doing pink, blue, and yellow. I'm gonna have the 3 of the wolves, so 1 of each color. You can see I've already got these base flowers. There's the yellow flower, the pink, and the blue. So in addition to the browns and greens, that's what we'll be doing. Of course, it's still separate from the base, so that'll make it faster or easier to get into the nooks and crannies. For a palette, I just have this plastic plate, and I think I will start off by putting the pink on, and that's going to be this purple alchemy color. So I think we'll go into speed up montage mode, but I'll try to show you each of the color bottles as I switch. Alright, so we got a few flowers spread out, and let me just show you how the paint goes on. Let's do his face pink. I'm gonna do the big old flower pink. You can see the speed paint goes on pretty generously. Just brush it on and it does the rest of the work for you. All right, so I got a few flowers down. Sometimes I like to put darker colors down first because then I can paint over them with an acrylic white and cover up any spots that I want to fix, but I decided to start with the pink. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to do the flowers, I think, and then the dark, or maybe I'll do dark last. I don't know, but this is the next flower color. All right, yellow next is going to be Zealot Yellow flowers. So there's the flowers on the base. So it's kind of hard to paint just holding it by hand. I actually usually use these. Other people have different techniques, but when I started painting, I happen to have these I didn't use. These are just like twist off caps that you can put on a can of soda or something, but I just use it as the perfect way to hold something that I'm working on. Just put some more of that sticky tack, and there, it's now stuck. I've got a nice handle, and I'm going to paint this base first, and then I'm going to put our Floraleaf onto the base so that I can paint him without having to touch him. All right, so there's the base. I thought about putting some green on it, kind of like the wolf has some green on its base, but this has some very obvious like leaves that were obvious green candidates, and this one doesn't have that. So I didn't do it, and that way, I mean, upside it won't pull any attention from the guy himself. So let's just put him in. I'll glue him on later. Put him on for now, and that way I don't have to touch him anymore. I can just hold it by the bottom piece while I start to paint. And I see a lot of spots that are kind of obviously brown, or I mean, at least what I'm thinking would be brown, like that whole back, all those tendrils of like brown vines. But I do want to make sure he gets a lot of green on him, so I might do some of those green, or maybe it'll kind of transition to green on his finger tendrils. Although I have to admit, I am not really able to do transition, so that might not be in the cards. So let's see how it ends up. Alright, so I had to take it back off the base so I could get under some of those spaces. I'm glad I didn't glue it yet, but now everything is pretty much painted. There are a few white spots left. You can especially see them since I'm zoomed in here, but at a glance, not super noticeable, and I'm not the kind of painter who's super particular. I'm happy just to have paint on the model. I snuck a little bit of green in there, mixed the hardened leather with the dark wood, the light brown and the dark brown, some green to pop. I didn't work in any of the yellowish green like I did on the wolf. I did it on the wolf in part because there were going to be multiple layers of leaves right next to each other, and I wanted to make sure I have different colors. The Floraleaf didn't really have that. I mean, I guess there's kind of some different colors, but I just stuck with the green. Plus, that yellow-green mix was actually green and yellow. I had to mix that for the wolf, and I didn't really feel like doing it. This is a little bit sloppier than I prefer because it's hard to paint with the camera in between me and the brush and while trying to hold it there, but that's pretty much the process. Some models I'll end up going back with some details and adding some white or black to clean up, especially like eyes, but this guy doesn't really need it. So I'm gonna call it done. Oh, Actually, let's do the base. So I like a black, solid black base because it doesn't make sense to me that models can move around and carry their terrain with them. This guy does have some flowers on the base. So I'm going to say that all these creatures, they have such nice bases, I couldn't just ignore them. So I went ahead and I did paint them instead of just painting them all black or putting them on a flat base. But I'm going to say they grow flowers and plants as they move. So that will justify why their base carries their terrain with them. But I do need to take some black acrylic and go around the bottom lip of this base here. All right, it's the next morning. Finished our painting. It's time to just hit it with some varnish so that it can be protected and I don't have to worry about picking it up and rubbing off any paint. This should seal it up and protect them. So I'm going to give this a spray off camera because I only have 2 hands. But that will be it. So this is basically our final model. All right, and that's it. Here it is again, from 3D printed to fully primed. Thanks for watching. I'm definitely not a pro, so there are probably better places to ask if you have any questions, but I'll be happy to answer any to the best of my knowledge and ability. If you leave a comment. Thanks for subscribing, and bye.